A tech activist gets assassinated at his own event. His wife steps in to lead the movement, and then has to go on camera to tell millions of people to stop turning his death into clickbait conspiracy content, while big names on the right are demanding an FBI cover-up investigation. Meanwhile, the market just quietly repriced the risk of American political violence like it's a mid-cap earnings miss. Welcome back to the comment section with Thomas Paul. Today we're talking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, Erika Kirk's brutal response to the conspiracy theories, and what all of this actually means for your money, your risk profile, and the future of political beta in your portfolio. And yeah, I know this sounds like it's just about drama on X. It's not. This is about whether political violence is becoming a recurring macro event you actually have to model, the way you model interest rates and oil. Let's get into it. So, quick recap so we're all on the same page. On September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was fatally shot at a Turning Point USA event in Utah. Police say the shooter was 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson. He's now facing aggravated murder charges with the possibility of the death penalty. According to authorities, based on what's public so far, he acted alone. In the middle of that, his wife, Erika Kirk, steps up. She's now CEO of the organization, and instead of getting to just grieve in peace, she has to go online and address this wave of conspiracy theories swirling around her husband's death. This is where it gets intense. She calls the conspiracies a mind virus. She says her team has received death threats. She literally has to ask people to stop filming and taking content at her husband's gravesite. Imagine losing your spouse and then having to beg the internet to stop using the cemetery as a backdrop for engagement farming. And here's where things get interesting. Because at the same time, Erika is saying, "Stop. Enough. This is insane." Some of her late husband's political allies and adjacent commentators are doing the exact opposite, publicly pushing for more scrutiny, more questions, more speculation. You've got accounts like Laura Loomer amplifying claims and screenshots, asking whether there's more to the story. You've got people like Project Constitute posting that we still don't know enough about things like the shooter's background. There's a trending topic on X around the assassination, turning it into basically a political CSI episode in real time. Tucker Carlson is weighing in, demanding more FBI transparency about odd details like aircraft in the area and unexplained cell phone pings. And some commentators are pointing out anomalies and saying, "We need a full accounting. We're not taking the lone gunman line at face value." So inside the same political ecosystem, you have two forces. One, a widow, now CEO, calling conspiracy culture a mind virus, openly talking about the psychological and physical danger it's causing her staff. Two, high-profile commentators calling for more investigation, more exposure, and more doubt about what the authorities are saying. That tension, that split, is exactly why this matters for investors. Because this is not just a sad story. This is a signal. Let's zoom out. When a high-profile political figure is assassinated in a supposedly secure environment, and the reaction is to turn it into a 24/7 conspiracy content machine that does two things to the system. First, it destroys institutional trust even further. Second, it normalizes political violence as a storyline that people expect to see again, and markets are quietly watching both. Nothing says healthy, stable democracy like people live streaming from a fresh grave for clout, right? Now, to be super clear, everything we're talking about here is based on publicly available info. Authorities say it was a lone shooter, a 22-year-old, charged with aggravated murder, possibly facing the death penalty. Commentators like Tucker and others are not claiming to have smoking gun evidence of some vast plot. They're saying, "We want more information from the FBI. There are weird details we don't understand, like aircraft movements and cell pings. But socially, that nuance doesn't matter." Online, you basically have team, "Never trust the official story," versus team, "Please stop turning my husband's death into your engagement strategy." And that polarization is the tell. Because when trust in institutions collapses, you don't just get angry voters. You get higher risk premiums. But wait, it gets even wilder. Think about how traders price risk today. For years, the big political variables were stuff like elections, regulation, wars, maybe the occasional coup if you're trading emerging markets. Now, if you're managing serious capital, you have to start asking, is high-profile political violence in the US a one-off shock, or is this becoming a recurring risk factor? Because if this is the new normal, mass shootings, assassination attempts, rising threats against public figures, that bleeds into security costs for events and campaigns, insurance costs for venues, conferences, and political organizations, spreads on companies overtly tied to one side of the political spectrum, and most importantly, the stability premium that used to be baked into U.S. assets. Think about it from an allocator's perspective. You're comparing U.S. risk to EU, to Asia, to Latin America. If U.S. politics starts to look like a permanently boiling pot instead of a slow simmer, you want a little more compensation to hold risk assets. That doesn't show up as a giant red headline. It shows up as slightly higher required returns and slightly lower valuations over time. It's almost like political volatility becomes the new inflation. Always there, always annoying, always eating into your upside. Let's talk about Erika specifically, because she matters for another reason: governance. When she called conspiracy theories a mind virus, that wasn't just an emotional reaction. It was also a leadership signal to donors, to staff, and to the broader right-wing political ecosystem. She's basically saying, if you're part of this movement, and you're feeding the speculation that my husband's death was part of some giant hidden plot, without evidence, you're not helping us. You're putting people in danger. She describes death threats to her team. She asks for privacy at the gravesite. Those details matter, because they show the downstream effect of conspiracy culture on operations. If you're a major donor, you're watching that and asking, can this organization operate safely? Will events be targeted more often? Do we need higher security spending? Are we going to have staff quitting because they're getting threats from the fringes of our own base? That's operational risk. That's governance risk. That's reputational risk. And for investors who look at the media and political sector as an asset class, whether it's publicly traded right-leaning media, social platforms, or adjacent businesses, that's the kind of risk that creeps into projections. Here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The people calling for more FBI transparency, like Tucker and others, plus accounts like Laura Loomer and others amplifying skepticism, aren't operating in a vacuum. They have massive reach. They can move narratives, which can move turnout, which can move policy, which can move markets. So you have this weird feedback loop. Institutional narrative. Lone shooter, case under investigation, system is working. Alt narrative ecosystem. We don't trust that. Look at these weird details. We want answers. Victim's family and organization. These narratives are hurting us and making things more dangerous. And investors are somewhere in the middle going, cool, so do I need to start modeling assassination headline risk into campaign cycles now? Because nothing says safe haven asset like wondering which public figure gets targeted next. Let's hit some direct implications and then we'll get concrete about what to watch. 1. Security and insurance. If events like this aren't seen as one-off freak events anymore, you're going to see higher security budgets for political events, conferences, college tours, and live media shows. That means higher costs for organizations like Turning Point and others. It also means insurers rethink how they price coverage for venues and organizers. That cost either gets passed on to donors, ticket buyers, or it just shrinks margins. So if you're invested in event-driven media, this is part of your risk stack now. 2. Censorship versus virality pressure. Erika calling conspiracy theories a mind virus and describing threats is going to add pressure on platforms like X to decide, do we crack down harder on unproven allegations around violent events? Or do we keep letting it rage in the name of free speech? You've got people like Laura Loomer posting very aggressively. You've got trending topics constantly around every new tragedy. You have Tucker and others pushing for more skepticism of official narratives. This becomes a business dilemma for platforms. If they clamp down too hard, they risk user revolt and accusations of political censorship. If they don't, advertisers get nervous and liability risk rises. Retail investors in social media names should absolutely be factoring this in. Every major political violence event becomes a test of the platform's brand, user base, and ad relationship. 3. Macro trust. Every time there's a high-profile assassination or attempt, and the immediate reaction online is, "The FBI is lying, here are screenshots of planes, here are weird cell pings, nothing is real," you scrape a little more trust off the system. That translates into more people believing the financial system is rigged, elections are rigged, markets are rigged. You can only run that script for so long before people start parking their money outside the system entirely, crypto, gold, offshore, or just under the mattress. You want a fun stat? You don't need one. Just look at behavior. Every spike in political chaos triggers spikes in trading volumes, volatility, and flows into safe assets. So what should you be watching next as an investor? First, the legal process around the shooter. Authorities say, lone gunman, charged, case moving toward trial, death penalty on the table. The trial will be a massive media event. If it looks orderly, transparent, and the evidence is straightforward, the official story gains some ground. If there are big gaps, weird redactions, or classified elements, the skepticism online will go nuclear. That doesn't just impact this case, it bleeds into trust around every other high-stakes federal case, every other political violence investigation. Second, watch how Erika runs the narrative from here. She's CEO now. Does she double down on condemning the conspiracy ecosystem around her husband's name? Does she draw a bright line between the organization and the more extreme voices? Or does she end up having to coexist with them because they're too powerful in her ecosystem to fully alienate? Her posture will tell you a lot about the future direction of that part of the right-wing movement, and by extension, its fundraising, partnerships, and ability to operate in corporate America. Third, watch what major commentators do. Tucker Carlson is already on record pushing for more transparency from the FBI, citing things like strange aircraft, unusual phone data, those sorts of anomalies that fuel suspicion. That position plays well with an audience that already distrusts institutions. But over time, if institutional distrust hardens into "nothing is real, everything is a plot," it becomes harder to pass basic policy, harder to certify elections, harder to maintain social order. Again, more risk premium baked into U.S. assets. If other major influencers decide to copy that line, always suggest that something darker might be behind every event, you get a structural narrative bear market in trust. And remember, when trust goes down, hedging goes up. People buy more protection, they demand higher yields, they trade shorter term. All of that reduces long-term investment and weighs on growth. Fourth, watch how platforms respond. X is ground zero right now. You have Loomer and others blasting out claims. You have trending feeds turning every violent event into a content festival. And you have mainstream and alternative voices colliding in real time. If X introduces tighter rules around doxing, threats, and speculative claims tied to violent incidents, that's going to anger a chunk of the user base, but it might make advertisers happier and reduce legal risk. If they don't, you'll likely see more pressure from regulators and more squeamishness from big brands. All of that matters if you believe in the long-term value of attention platforms. And here's the thing no one wants to say out loud. Every time someone monetizes a conspiracy theory with a Patreon link, a merch line, or a political donation button, they're creating an economic incentive for more of this content, which means the mind virus Erika talked about, it's profitable, and profitable viruses are very hard to kill. Let's bring this home to you as a retail investor. What do you actually do with all of this? First, don't trade the assassination. That sounds obvious, but some people really do go out there trying to make short-term bets off tragedy. That's not a strategy, that's a personality disorder. What you can do is adjust your mental model of risk. Assume that in every U.S. electoral cycle going forward, there is a non-zero probability of political violence, assassination attempts, or successful attacks against public figures, on either side. Assume that when those events occur, social media will instantly fracture into official story versus shadow story ecosystems. And assume that this will be weaponized politically and commercially. If you understand that, you can. Be less surprised by volatility in media and platform stocks. Be more realistic about the fragility of U.S. political stability, and price that into your risk tolerance. Be more skeptical of anyone selling you a clean, simple explanation in the first 24 hours. Second, watch for policy knock-on effects. If violence escalates, you can get new security regulation around events and protests, more domestic surveillance powers for agencies like the FBI, which then become new flashpoints of controversy, more legal risk for platforms hosting incitement, however that ends up being defined. Those shifts affect tech, insurance, defense, security vendors, even real estate around events. Third, pay attention to who is building trust, not just attention. Erika's statement is a trust-building attempt. Stop weaponizing this tragedy. Stop threatening my people. Stop desecrating a grave for views. Commentators demanding more transparency from the FBI, if they do it responsibly, can also be trust-building. You hold institutions accountable. You make sure the story holds up. But turning every loose data point, every strange plane, every odd phone ping, into content without context, that's attention building, but it erodes trust long-term. For your portfolio, you want exposure to people, brands, and platforms that net increase trust in their ecosystem, because trust is the thing that lets capital sit still and compound. Without trust, everyone's just day trading the apocalypse. So where does this go? We're heading into an era where political risk is no longer a chapter in an emerging markets textbook. It's a daily lived reality in the United States. The assassination of Charlie Kirk, the response from Erika, the conspiratorial frenzy on X, the calls from figures like Tucker Carlson and others for more FBI transparency, all of that is a preview. If high-profile violence becomes a recurring feature of American political life, then the U.S. becomes just another place where you ask, what's my political violence discount today? And if the default public reaction to every tragedy is to assume the official story is a lie and to go hunting for planes and pings on social media, then institutional trust will keep grinding lower. Erika called it a mind virus. She's not wrong. But it's also a market variable now. The question for you is simple. Are you going to pretend this is all just noise? Or are you going to integrate political instability into how you think about risk, return, and time horizon? All right, I want to hear from you. Do you think Erika is right to call the conspiracies a mind virus that's endangering people? Or do you side more with the camp saying, no, we need maximum transparency, and questioning the FBI is always healthy? Drop your full, unfiltered take in the comments. I read a lot of them, probably more than is good for my mental health. And if you want more deep dives at the messy intersection of politics, tech, and your money, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and send this to that one friend who trades based on whatever's trending on X. This is the comment section with Thomas Paul. Stay skeptical, stay informed, and don't let anyone turn your portfolio into their conspiracy theory exit liquidity.